Welcome to the Father Jim Clark Show, here on Heavens Road FM, the UK's fastest growing Catholic radio station.
Well, welcome back to the show, and today I have got another bit of a special for you, because today I have an interview again with the Bishop of Salford, my bishop, Bishop John Arnold. So today Bishop John is going to explain a little bit about what's happening in the Diocese of Salford, and I approached him to do this for a number of reasons. First of all, it will allow the people of the Diocese of Salford to keep up to speed with what's going on, and also to explain to a much wider audience about the things that are happening specifically in this diocese, which might start to happen in one or two other dioceses around the country. Now, today, Bishop John has been so kind to give me a little bit of his time for Heavens Road FM, and he has also invited me to his own home. So we have set up a little studio here in Wardley Hall. Well, Bishop John, thank you very much for, first of all, another interview. And this time, listeners, we are in the Bishop's own home here in Wardley Hall. So we have set up a little recording studio for him here. And Bishop John this time is going to speak to us about what is going on here in the Diocese of Salford. So, Bishop John, can you give us a quick overview about what has happened in the diocese so far regarding the unfolding plans that you've got for the diocese, and how you've gone about relating these plans to parishioners across the whole of the diocese?
Yes, we've unrolled a plan which I think has got several stages to it. And the first thing I wanted to do when I came to the diocese was to get to know the priests and the people as best I could. Now, that's an enormous task, because we've got a lot of priests and a lot of parishes and people. Although geographically the diocese is really quite small, there's an awful lot of Catholics here. So trying to get to know the diocese, the first thing I wanted to do was to have a consultation. And I was really pleased. We sent out a number of questions for anybody who wanted to answer. And I was really pleased. There were over 3,000 individual responses, and then there were a couple of thousand group responses. So I don't know quite how many that would amount to all in all, but a large number of people. And what was really good was, as we looked at the answers, there was a real consensus about everything that they wanted to see, whoever they were, wanted to see happening in the diocese. So I've got room to move there on a number of decisions, and I'm very pleased about that.
Actually, that was a very interesting thing, because one of those group responses was one from my own parish. And over the years, you try to get all sorts of meetings. That single meeting brought more people out than at any other time in the 10 years I've been there.
Right.
So it was very interesting.
I think there has been a good degree of expectation. I think people know that decisions need to be made, and we've got to get on with it. And to a great extent, they want to be involved in the discussions.
Right. So when you were appointed as Bishop of Salford, how quickly did it occur to you that something fairly major needed to be done?
Let's say it wasn't very long. I was made aware of it really even in the first few weeks, that there was this expectation, decisions needed to be made, and this is the time we need to make them. It's not a question that my predecessors have failed to make the decisions. We're just in different times. It's been like Pope Francis. He doesn't have a word to say in criticism of his predecessors, but he says, now we've got to deal with where we are now. And that's the way I feel too. So it did occur to me fairly quickly that quite a lot has to be done.
Yeah. I think one of the things obviously is kind of bringing priests on board with this, because we've known for years, and all of the people across the diocese have known really, that things couldn't be sustained as they are at present. But an interesting thing was that I think certainly when it was first put forward that you were going to tackle this, I thought to myself, if he's brave, he may even close as many as 30% of our churches. So where did the 50% figure come from?
Well, that was a figure that was bandied around even before I came. I think there was a thought that we might be reducing how we do that. The figure of 90 was proposed, which is, again, quite a decrease, isn't it? But they thought, well, if we go just to 90 parishes, we'll be doing the same thing again in just a few years. So let's be radical. It doesn't mean, and we've got to get that straight immediately, that 75 parishes does not mean 75 churches for the whole of the diocese. It may mean twice that number, I don't know, because parishes can certainly have chapels of ease, second churches, but under one parish priest.
I think that's an important point to make, actually, because one or two of my own parishioners have been a little confused about that. So, you kind of say to them, well, 50% of the churches will go as home churches, but they may be swallowed into another bigger parish so they'll have two.
Yes. I don't think it's unreasonable for priests to have their own parish church and a chapel of ease, maybe in some cases even two chapels of ease. But what I don't want is lots of little communities, because those communities don't grow in strength. They're not really missionary. If they get to a small number of people, they can't band together and really get to grips with a challenge.
Yeah. I think from one of the things that I've seen in the past is that we, as the priests of the diocese, are going to have to be very careful that we don't neglect either a sister parish or whatever you want to call it, that we don't neglect the community that is there, because I think it's as important that we try and,
Oh, everybody's got to be included.
Yeah.
We mustn't find ourselves walking away from people who want to be part of the church, who are part of the church. We've got to make sure we're looking after them. Now, maybe they're going to have to travel a little bit further to their nearest church after the changes, but we've got to be sure that the Catholic Church is present in every corner of this diocese in one way or another.
All right. I know that from your initial pastoral letter to the parishioners, you've asked them, I love this kind of sentence that came about 2/3 of the way in. You asked them to be generous in the event of their own parish maybe having to be closed, or generous in welcoming parishes from another parish nearby that may have closed. Do you think are they going to be generous with you? And do you think that there will be 100% support for these quite radical actions that you're taking?
Well, I think there's going to be a bit of a mix, isn't there? I've been very surprised in some places that I've been where people have said quite matter-of-factly, I imagine this church will close, and it should do. And they've been very generous in accepting that. I've had one or two letters, only one or two, where people have said, essentially, don't touch our church because we're going to remain open and we've been here all our lives and nothing's going to change that. Well, they're not being as generous as I'd like them to be at the moment. The thing is, we can't get just tied down to affection for buildings. It's interesting, isn't it, that Jesus never had a fixed meeting place. He went to the lakeside, he went up in the hills, he was in the street preaching, wherever in people's homes. There was never any mention of attaching an affection to a building. Now, I know people do feel very strongly about that, and I sympathise with that, and very often they've spent a lot of their own money helping to build these places, but we can't be ruled by buildings. That's not really the gospel.
Yeah. I think that one of the problems that I could see was this, what I'm referring to as a Chinese whisper effect, where priests or parishioners may receive incorrect information because they've heard it from maybe a third or fourth party, or indeed when they hear a pastoral letter that is read. And it's this effect that I quite often say, people really only hear what they want to hear, really, rather than actually what's being said.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, there's not a single church which is allotted for being a parish church that will remain open or will be one of the ones that close. There have been no decisions from that at all. And if anybody's got that impression, that must be made very clear. I do know there is a Chinese whisper effect around the place at times, and we've just got to be clear that none of those decisions have been made yet. We're still talking, still consulting about it.
As one of your priests, one of the things that I, A, have appreciated and B, have liked very much about what you've done since you've come, because I've talked about it for years, is that we really, every priest knows that this has needed to happen for years. Mm-hmm. And what we really ought to have done is to have been drip feeding our people this for, say, the last 15 or 20 years, so that when it does happen, it's not a complete shock to them. And I've noticed that because you've sent out quite a number of communiques to the people, pastoral letters and others, including the consultation document itself. And that's what I see what you've done, that you kind of drip feeding it, that you've got to get on board. It's nice, gently, it's beautifully done what you've done. I really appreciate that.
I'm pleased to hear it. I've done 6 pastorals, I think, and they've all been concerned with the consultation and our future and the way we approach it. And I have tried to keep people up to date. 1 or 2 people have said, it's another pastoral, it must be about, we're getting bored with it. But I think the general impression is we're being informed, and we like that. I don't want there to be terrible shocks, and I certainly don't want to send around a list of parishes that will close, full stop, because that's unfair to the people, and we've really got to be as open as we can to their opinions, their needs, and to keep consulting.
Okay. Can you perhaps give a quick overview of the plans that you've got, say, for the next 6 months? And what strategies are you using to help you in the kind of difficult decisions that you've got to face and you've got to make in the next year or so?
Okay, yes. Well, we had 2 clergy meetings in February. Just about all the priests made either one or other meeting. And in that we decided what we need to do. And there was a clear consensus, I think, about what needs to happen. Now, the priests have gone away back to their parishes, and they've got 2 months to have, I hope, parish meetings, drawing on the expertise and the opinions of their parishioners, both in open meetings and the ones they know best who take responsibility in their parishes. And then the priests are going to come together in their different deaneries. And on those deanery meetings, it's no longer what we need to do, it's how we're going to do it. So that should be enabling us to have an agenda that makes sense, and we should come out of that with a fairly clear proposal for each deanery. Now, I need to go away and put that together and then publish it to the diocese. Let everybody see what is proposed and see how people feel about it. And there'll be some strong reaction, I'm sure, but we've got to be prepared for that. And then, after another period of consultation, giving people time to talk and to listen, I will make a final decision on the plan that we're going to be implementing. We won't do it all at once, but we'll know what we're doing. People will know where they stand, and we can be preparing the way as best we can.
Have you got a working party to kind of help you out with that? Because one of the things that happened in our last deanery meeting was that we thought there might be some issues to do with the overlap of the deanery boundaries themselves, which have kind of changed and chopped a little while, So when we are making decisions about, our deanery, what we're not doing is really looking at the 3 deaneries that attach themselves to us.
Yeah, there are going to be some need to have the overview, but I think that if we can get the 8 deaneries to give their proposals, we can put them together on a drawing board, literally, and we can decide where we're going to have boundaries. And it may be that some of the deanery boundaries will need to change and some of the parish boundaries, but we'll get there in the end. And then there'll be time, I think, to be discussing this, because it's silly things like motorways cutting parishes in 2 that weren't there 20 years ago, but they're there now, and they divide a community. Well, maybe this is an opportunity to redraw the boundaries of that community and that parish.
Interesting you should say about the motorways, because one of the things that's kind of cropped up is things like building projects in various parishes, my own being one of them. It's like I've had in the last 6 years, 1,200 houses built in the parish, and there's another 700 just started.
Right. Yeah. What I've asked the priests to do is to be aware of their own parish communities and possibilities of development, but we're also going to the local authorities because they've usually got a fairly long-term view as to where there's going to be development, and we should have a clear eye. That's all going to be included.